Hello and welcome to Rosie's Preserving School, and we're into the beautiful autumn season with all of the lovely fruits that brings, and it's all quite different. It's like sort of turning a page really, you know, one minute you're dealing with tomatoes and courgettes and all the rest of it, and then all of a sudden we're up to our ears in apples and onions and plums. I unfortunately wasn't up to my ears in plums this year. I didn't have a single plum, and because of all the sort of issues I had, I didn't manage to find any either. So I've had to buy some plums for tonight's recipe, which is my winter warm plum chutney, which is, as it describes, it's a lovely chutney. I always think it's sort of one for Boxing Day and then onwards into the sort of coldness of the after Christmas bit in January. It's very dark, it's very delicious, and it's my own recipe, and I thought I'd just go through a bit as I'm chopping and everything as to how to think about constructing your own recipes now that you've all been you know, quite experienced now in doing different techniques and thinking about different vinegars and sugars and spices and so on, and how to sort of put it all together so that it all melds together to be what you want it to be. And as ever, our mantra is only preserve things that you like. So, you know, no caraway seeds for me, but you might decide, you know, the best thing on earth for you is a chutney that has a high proportion of caraway seed. And it's as simple as that. It won't make any difference to the chemical structure of the chutney. It just makes a difference to the flavour. And that's the main thing, really, as far as we're concerned at the end of the day. I'm going to start prepping the chutney because it will take a while to cook down. Again, we might, like with the apple chutney, we might not finish it through to a suitable stage. We might need to cook it on for a little bit longer, but that's all right because we know about jarring up and all of that. And I can go over it for some new people. I can go over that verbally and show them what I mean. So the first thing to put into the pan is the vinegar. We've talked about vinegars a lot. Vinegar is vinegar is vinegar. As long as it has vinegar on the label, it will be suitable for the preservation of food. So I have here a red wine vinegar because essentially all of my ingredients, except the apples, are red or dark. So the red wine vinegar will go with that. It will give a nice roundness of flavour, and the actual, again, the chemical structure is no different from white wine vinegar, cider vinegar. If you only have malt vinegar, I say only, that's absolutely fine. You can use that instead. So I'm just looking at my recipe. I know I wrote it, but I write quite a lot, so I can't remember. So it's 600 ml, which is just a pint. We don't want everything swimming in it. So I'm going to put that into the jug and then put it in the pan. Now, I've said this before, I think, but with these sort of plasticky things, if you tip it on its side and pour, it comes out evenly. If you tip it that way, it goes glug, glug, glug everywhere but the jug. So always tip it on its side. And I think somebody on a class told me that about a year ago. All these years, I've been spilling it everywhere. So that goes into the pan first. That means I can get some heat into it. And plugged in, that's all right. I'm going to chop the onions next because they are the hardest ingredient, and I need 450 grams, just a pound. So let's see, which is going to be just 2 of these, I think, I hope. Otherwise I'll be chopping. There we go. So that's good. Oh, let's go throw it on the floor. And these lovely red onions go with all our red ingredients. They will add a nice colour to the finished chutney. Take off the beautiful skins. Stain your hands probably, or if you've got light clothes on, be careful not to get it on there. Now I've put these ingredients in, which is fine. You might have maybe at the end of the summer a couple of beetroot left or something like that, and you could just as easily put those in. Chopped, you don't need to cook them. Give them a good scrub. If the skins are fine, just take the tops and bottoms off and then chop them up into cubes, and you can put those in as well. Or you know, anything like that that is sort of matches the colour, as it were. And that's the way to think about what you're going to devise your recipe from. It's a good place, good as place to start as any. Just a beautiful colour, aren't they? And I always think red onions are a bit like red cabbage, and they're a work of art. You know, the patterns of nature, once you cut into the flesh, is just exquisite. Right, and cut those across. There we are, look at that. I've always cut onions like this. I expect there's all sorts of other ways, but it seems to work for me. That piece of root out of the way. Let's get that one in. And this chutney is not one where we sort of put things in order, except that right at the beginning here, I'm doing the hardest things first. And I don't mean difficult things, I mean they're actually physically the hardest things, so they get the longest time to cook. So we can just go on and keep prepping everything. But I'll go through them as we put them in. Right. I'll give those a stir. I'm going to go on to the apples. Same as I've shown you before, just cut round the clock into the wedges, slice the core out of the middle, slice down under the skin. My goodness, I seem to be doing nothing but peel apples lately. It's just that time of year. Take that out. They have been incredible, the apples this year. Very healthy, quite large. You see how the onion stain my hand is coming off onto the apple, which is fine. Oops. Not going to do anything with these peels tonight because there won't really be enough to repurpose. Go in. Vinegar's making that nose run as usual, which is annoying. One apple to go, and then we'll start on the plums. I hope you've got some nice sort of Victoria plums or something. I've got some, I did buy them from the farm shop, but they don't look desperately British. But never mind, it will demonstrate if nothing else, and it'll all be fine when it's cooked. One more. I know some of you are making gifts for Christmas this year. So this is a chutney that is very well received. And as I've said before, if you're going to make for hampers, don't make huge great jars because it's difficult to get them into the chosen container. Keep all the jars sort of 190 ml or less, and then it will look more generous because you'll have sort of more but smaller jars, and it's just easier to get them to fit as well. I've managed to finish my hamper book, and that should be out in the next week or so. So that's got lots of ideas in gifts and so on. Right, that's the apple done. Now we're going to move on to the plums. And I need 1.2 kilos, so that's what I've got here. So these are quite big plums, round, the big round ones. So I'm hoping they're freestone ones and I won't have to dig the stone out of it. And normally I would say put the plum halves in, but I'm actually going to cut them in quarters. Otherwise they're just going to be huge. I mean, they will cook down, but yeah, I'm going to have to dig these out, which is, there we go. Give them a twist. They don't feel sort of super ripe, but that actually is a good thing. You don't want the fruit to be too squishy at this stage. It's better for it to cook down and soften rather than be soft before it even gets in the pan. I must say they're a gorgeous colour. Obviously, we've got a fly now. We haven't had any for weeks, and I opened the back door this afternoon to go out to the chickens, and this one fly, I'm sure he must know when it's a class night and he waits outside. So he's flying about annoying everybody now. Right, 1, 2. When I'm doing a big sort of prep thing like this, I sort of find all different ways to cut things so that I don't get too bored. You know, I sort of swap it around and so it's not too tedious. Oh, Rachel's disappeared. Oh, there she is. You cooking, Rachel? Yeah, good. Oh. More to go. Oh. No, that one's a bit squidgy, so I won't use that one. I don't know what the plums are, Brenda. Like Rachel, I think they're probably Spanish. They're certainly not. Oh, I'll put that one in. I'll cut it up. They're certainly not British plums, but which is a pity. But there we are. But they are a lovely colour. Give that a stir. I'm just going to rinse my hands so I can go through the spices with you. Right. Now, when I was sort of devising this, I had to sort of think about the spices and what I thought would be delicious, and also what I liked or what we liked. I'm going to put the next ingredient in, which is the black mustard seed. They go in loose. So there's 2 teaspoons of black mustard seeds there. So they're going to go in. They don't really add much flavour, but they do add sort of texture and a bit of interest. And then in here, I've got some cloves, which is a teaspoonful of cloves, which is plenty. You don't want masses and masses of them. I've got a piece of cinnamon stick, and these are my all-time favourite spice, which is allspice. These are allspice berries. They're whole. I don't crush them or anything, but they're not going to go in like that. I've got here my little spice bag. You can tie it up in pieces of muslin if you want to, but I have these little calico spice bags, which I use, and now I've got to try and tip them in without tipping them all over the table. So they go in. The cinnamon can be broken up, and the cloves can go in. Now, the recipe also asks for a piece of whole ginger root, which I totally failed to order. And I thought, oh, well, I'll put some ground ginger in. But actually, what I'm going to do is put some of the preserved ginger in, chopped up, which will be nice. And so the spice bag goes in as is. And if I had the ginger root, it would go into the bag as well. And I wouldn't peel it. I just take it, any sort of rough ends off, and chop it into slices and put it in. Just gives a bit of heat. So in my jar, I've got, I'm going to try and stab a couple of pieces of the preserved ginger. Just for good measure, I'll put some of the juice in as well. Should be nice and gingery. Now I'm just going to chop this first in slices and then in little dice. Sorry, camera, can't see, like that. So you can improvise, you know, don't fret if you haven't got exactly the ingredients. Very gelatinous. Gelatinous. It's only a syrup. I mean, there won't be anything wrong with it. It's just thickened up, I suppose, with getting cooler. Sorry, there was a question about the syrup in the preserved ginger had become very thick. So that's going in. Actually, I'm not sure whether I don't prefer the idea of this rather than the plain root ginger, but anyway. That's all cooking down quite nicely. I'm going to, it smells lovely actually. The spices are already starting to come through, even though they're in their little bag. I can smell them. It just makes it easier to remove them. You don't want whole allspice really in your chutney. It wouldn't be very pleasant. So I'll just splash myself then. Okay, the other ingredient, one of the other ingredients is 225 grams or 8 ounces of sultanas, which are just lovely and sultanery. They're not as dark as raisins. You could use raisins if you want to, you know, similar result. So, but I have to have sultanas, so they're going in. It's starting to look drier, and as I've said before, the sugar when it goes in will loosen it. It always gets more liquid from adding the sugar. So I'm just letting these things cook down a little bit before I put the sugar in. I still haven't managed to order any muscovado sugar. So I've used the last little bit that I've got, which is about 1/3 of the recipe quantity, which will give it a nice colour. And then I've got some demerara as well, which will be fine. But really it should be all muscovado if you have it, which will be great. It's funny, out of all the sort of foodstuffs that you can buy online, that you can, I mean, I don't buy from a supermarket online, that's probably the problem. But it's very, very hard to buy sugar in bulk online. And I never know why that is. But anyway, just turn it down to 3 so it doesn't stick. That's the problem with anything to do with stone fruit. You have to be careful that it doesn't catch on the pan. Plums, apricots, green gages, all those kinds of things can very easily catch on the base of the pan. If you have it too high, it gets too hot. Right, that's good. We've got that all in. Excuse me, having a drink. I don't know if any of you made the, or tried to make the vinegar from the apple peel and cores the other day. I've strained mine now and it's sort of bubbling away over there nicely, turning it. It smells very vinegary, so I'm hoping the end result is going to be good. I hope it will clear. It's quite sort of cloudy at the moment, but I hope that will clear and settle and I'll end up with a nice apple vinegar, which would be very pleasing. So once you've made this and jarred it up, you need to put it away then to mature. A lot of chutneys need 6 to 8 weeks really to reach their sort of optimum flavour. You can eat them straight away, they won't harm you, but they can sometimes be a bit harsh. So find a nice sort of dark corner or cupboard or somewhere and put it in there and leave it to mature. And as I said, if you sort of have as your benchmark sort of Boxing Day lunch or Christmas Eve dinner or something, that will remind you actually that you made it, to go and find it, and it'll be just about perfect by then. So it's going to be absolutely lovely. Hope these plums are going to cook down a bit more than they are at the moment. All the apples are cooked down. The opposite problem to the apple chutney where the apples wouldn't cook. But it was eventually all right. So I'm going to put this sugar in. I'm going to try and mix it up a bit so it's not quite so weird looking. I must get on and sort of order all different sugars and get them all in together instead of keep apologising because I haven't got the right one. Right. Get that in, and then hopefully it won't it will get a bit more liquid and won't catch on the pan. Good stir, that's better. Just get it to dissolve now. Don't want to leave any grittiness at all. You'll notice this hasn't got any garlic in, it hasn't got any, I was going to say chives, chilies in it, you know, nothing harsh. It is just winter warm and that's it. But go ahead, you know, if you want to alter it and add different things, I won't know and I won't be offended. But it's always been a popular one for my customers, that's for sure. Right. While that's cooking, I'm just going to just talk a little bit about what we're devising for next year. Sorry, there's another question. Tracy says, is the 6-week maturing period the same for all chutneys? Most, Tracy. I think the only one really that you can eat sort of straight off the bat and it doesn't really change very much is mango chutney. And that's really because all that's in it is mangoes and onions. There aren't all different flavours all trying to kind of become one. So that's the only one really. But I mean, as I say, it won't hurt if you eat it before. It won't hurt you. It won't taste disgusting or anything. It just tastes better if you leave it for longer. But yeah, so next year, what we've devised is that we will, going forward, have Rosie's Persona School will have a library, and everything that we've done this year will be transferred as a recording into the library. Those of you that have paid for the classes throughout the year will be able to access the library as part of what you've paid for. And you can go and find the recipes that we've done there. I mean, it isn't on the website yet, so you don't need to sort of rush off and have a look. But this is how it's going to work. And then anybody that wants to access the classes that hasn't done them before can just pay to view and on an ad hoc basis. They'll be listed sort of seasonally, they'll be grouped seasonally, but obviously they won't be dated. and a lot of them will link to my recipe site. So if you're on the recipe site, hopefully there'll be a link there that you can go and watch the video, and if you want to. So that sort of transfers this year into next year, and that's what will be happening. And then I've been devising the program for next year, which is, as we've discussed, moving on. There will be a mixture of the standard workshops of, you know, just a straightforward recipe. For instance, the first workshop of the year will be marmalade, because we haven't done marmalade, and so we'll start with that, and that will be, you know, as a straightforward workshop. And then, as we discussed, I'll be covering pressure canning right from the get-go, you know, what equipment to buy, what jars to buy, all sorts of aspects of it that perhaps you don't see in other articles in other places. And that, because I thought, well, what do I do about that? And oh, I didn't realize I had to do this or that, or buy this or that. So it will really be starting from, you know, what choices to make before you actually buy something. And then once you get the equipment, what it all does. And then each season, there will be a proportion of the workshops will be a pressure canning recipe. A proportion of them will be some dehydrated recipes. There'll be standard recipes, and there'll be some sort of oddball things that perhaps you haven't thought of as preserves, but which, you know, may spark some interest. So the format will be the same. The day and time will be the same, and those joining in on that day and time, it will be a live class as it is now. You can cook along, except obviously with the pressure canning, where it's more theory than practice, because even if I actually do a recipe to show you, I can't pressure can it within the time frame, because it will take longer. So, and I can't do it start to finish, because you can't open the pressure canner until it's cooled down. So there will be an aspect of things that are theory, and there will be aspects that will be, you know, practical recipes that you can cook along as we do now. But it will all hopefully become clear, if not to you and to me. And the recipes will be supplied in the same way, or any background information that you need. If it's a theory class about pressure canning, there'll be backup notes available. And, you know, you can ask questions just as you do now. So I hope that sort of fits the bill and encourages people who haven't joined in this year to go and find the classes in the library, and that we can continue to grow together, because I learn a lot from doing the research and even doing the presentation. You know, when you're doing things in your own kitchen and you're just sort of working through them, you don't think about necessarily other people doing them and what they need to know to be able to do it. So it does sort of, it develops my knowledge as well. So look out for the details. Trev's working on the website at the moment, and well, not right at this moment, but he's working on it. So as soon as it's available, we'll let you know, and hopefully it will just be seamless and easy, and, you know, nothing tricky about it. But let me know if, you know, there's aspects of that that you don't like, or things that you could suggest that you'd prefer it was done a different way. You know, it's not cast in stone yet. So, you know, just interested to have feedback if you have any. Tracy, just got a dehydrator. Woo! Brilliant. That's great. So the dehydrating won't all be about, you know, having to have a dehydrator. There are things you can do without one. But obviously it's easier if you have, because you've got all the temperature controls and all that kind of thing. Doing it in an oven is a bit more hit and miss. You've got to keep looking at it. And in my experience, you had to sort of prop the door open with a wooden spoon so that it didn't overheat and everything burnt to a crisp. But it just depends on your oven. I mean, those people lucky enough to have an Argo with a very cool or a just warm oven is ideal. But I never had one of those. So Brenda's saying she always thought of canning as a specific USA thing. It has been, Brenda, up until about 10 years ago. And then, well, it's about 10 years ago, I bought a canner from the States. You still can only buy them from the States, so that's still the case. And I guess we sold about one a year to a sort of crazy enthusiast buried in a, you know, off-grid place somewhere in wherever. But now it's because of the state of play in the UK, people are beginning to realise that they need to be responsible for their own, not survival, that's too dramatic, but you know what I mean. And frankly, we can't import them quick enough. So it's a growing subject, but having got it, everybody does what I did, which is to leave it in the corner for about 6 weeks to 2 months, eyeing it up, you know, thinking I dared touch it, you know. It was sort of like an unexploded bomb, you know, and that's stupid because it isn't, and it's simple. It's a simple science, and as long as you follow the rules, as with everything else, it's all fine. And it gives you so much variety, so much reassurance that you have control. And if you grow your own stuff, I mean, you don't have to pressure can. You can get a lot of the supermarkets now do sort of bargain boxes on a weekend where you can just go and get, you know, whatever they've got left. And loads of people do that. They just go and get, you know, trays of mangoes or tomatoes or all sorts of things, so make the most of it. So Brenda's got a raven. Yeah, try it out, Brenda. If you've got some apples or something, just try. You need to, if you're going to do apples, you need to do them into acidulated water, which is this water with lemon juice in it, and then so they don't go brown while you're prepping them. But then get a cake cooling tray and drain the apples and put them on the tray, and then put them in the oven low and just let them dry out. And I think you'll be surprised. I had great excitement this week. Treble fetch it. I don't know why. I never realised you could make your own granola. I mean, how often do I stand here saying, you know, things didn't just appear in shops, they appeared in shops because people made them first, you know. But it's never occurred to me to make granola before. But I made it and it's delicious. And some of my apple rings that I've done, which are now in this jar, have now been cut up and put in the granola with all sorts of seeds and pumpkin seeds and raisins, and it's got coconut oil and maple syrup in it, and it's just delightful. So I'm very pleased with that. Never knew I think it's probably because I'm not a great cereal eater, but having left all the childhood cereals behind, and because we have muesli or granola in the house, I have started to eat it a bit more. It's the sogginess of cereal I don't like, you know. Once the milk's been on it, I just can't get on with that. So it's been a great success. So I haven't done a lot of dried fruits because I didn't really know what I was going to use them for if I dried them. But now with things like that, it's just, oh, well, I can mix it into that. I can use it for this. And it all becomes a lot, your whole diet becomes a lot more varied. So how long will the apple greens keep in the jar, Rosie? Well, if we didn't eat them, they would be fine in sort of 5 years' time. But we will eat them, of course, so or use them. So, you know, I have to say, I suppose sensibly, a year, but I know from experience they keep a lot longer than that. And I know that because I showed you the decorations I made to go in the hampers with the cinnamon sticks and the apple rings. Those apple rings, they're probably 5 years old and they're absolutely fine. So, I mean, they go a bit browner, but they would, I mean, I wouldn't eat those because they've been hung up and dusty, but, you know, if they're in the jar, they'll be fine. So the work is worth it, you know, and it's minimal work really, but don't sort of think, oh, I'm doing all this and, you know, it's a waste of time because we've got to eat them within 6 months or something. It's just not the case. So have we any other questions? Rachel says that the apple or the thing, well, they do look a bit squidgy and wrinkled, Rachel, because they haven't got any water in them, but I mean, they taste fine. And of course, all the sugars get concentrated. So they're very sweet. Well, not unpleasantly sweet, but they're not sharp and kind of, oh, you know, because the water's gone, the natural sugars in the fruit becomes heightened, and that's why children love them so much. If you've got youngsters around, whether you're a grandparent or a parent, an auntie or whatever, children absolutely love the dried apple rings, and because they're so pleasant to eat. Right, what are we doing for time? We're nearly there. I can tell this is going to need to cook a lot longer because of the sort of plums I've got. So I'm going to turn it down and let it cook on. But I know there are a couple of new people that are going to be watching this on, I should say catch up, shouldn't I? But on the recording. So I would just go through the jarring up. So that they know, because they won't have seen the jarring up previously. Elizabeth says, do we pop the plum chutney like the apple spice chutney? Yeah, that'll be fine, Elizabeth, because you're using 2-part lids, aren't you? And once we get to the pressure canning next year, everyone will know what we're talking about. And you have to seal the jar, so you'll have to put it in the oven, but that will be fine. Yeah, Rachel, I think you probably have got the same kind of plum, so just turn it down. It's better to cook it long and low, especially with the stone fruits, otherwise they will stick to the pan. Now what I'm going to do is fill a jar, even though it's not ready, and then in a minute I'll pour it back in. But just for the new people that are going to be watching. So we've got our jar here, standard jam jar, washed and in your case, warmed in the oven to dry, so that I can't do that because the oven makes too much noise on the film. So, but it's fine if you can't warm them, but it's just better for the jar really if you do. So you've got your jar. I use a funnel and I put the funnel in, and what we're aiming for is to fill the jar so the chutney comes up to where the cup here meets the spout. And then the jar should be perfectly filled. Now I'm just going to lift this down a minute so I don't have to ladle hot chutney all over the place. You can see it's not cooked down enough yet, and it will need probably about another half an hour. Some of it's all right, the sort of appley oniony bit, but the plums are certainly not cooking down quickly. If you've got Victoria plums or something like that, it will all cook much more evenly. If you've got frozen plums in the freezer, use them up for this, they'll be absolutely fine. So using a ladle, get your jar very close to the pan. If you haven't got a big funnel, I suggest you ladle into a jug and pour it in carefully so that you don't get it all down the side and everything. So this would be much more cooked by the time it's finished, but I'll just show you how it's so not cooked, it's not going through the funnel. In you go. That's it. I'll try and find some non-plum bits so it goes through easier. Just for demonstration. So we're just at the top of the funnel there, hopefully. Ready to put the funnel in. And as I lift it out, hopefully it won't go over the side. And you'll see that the chutney is right to the top. And that's how you want it. This is really, really hot. I'm going to put the, or I will, what you will need to do now is put the lid on straight away. And then as it cools, it shrinks because everything is bigger when it's hotter. So it will shrink down and it will leave a gap at the top, which will be a vacuum, which means that your chutney will keep in very good condition for a long time. I'll just get the apple one we made. I think you can just about see it on there, the gap at the top once the chutney's cooled. And when you open those jars, most of them will sort of pop very satisfyingly. I don't know whether it does show there, but there will be a gap at the top. But the thing is that nothing can grow in a vacuum. So any yeast or molds or anything like that that would normally spoil preserves can't survive because the vacuum is inert. Tracy's asking if you use frozen plums, do you need to defrost them first? Not really. The only thing I would say is if you've frozen them whole with the stones, is to weigh out the amount that you need. Let's see if I can pick that up and pour it back in. Weigh out the amount of plums that you need and then count them. Then put them all on to cook. And the stones, as the fruit cooks, the stones will rise to the surface and you can pick them out with a spoon. You'll just need an ordinary metal spoon to do that. And find all the stones. There's nothing worse than eating a chutney or something that you crack a tooth on a stone or something. So if you've weighed your amount out and you've got sort of 65 plums, then make sure you find 65 stones. And I usually put them on a dinner plate in little piles so that I can count them easily. And that's by far the best way. And then you can gift them to people knowing that they're not going to hurt themselves on it. So Elizabeth, does the fruit have to be completely covered by liquid? Last week, some of my apples were not completely submerged. Well, we didn't put all of the vinegar in last time. If you put the sugar in and it still looks a bit dry, then you can put a bit more vinegar in. I'm just loath to sort of put all the vinegar in at the beginning, because then you end up, you know, it's all just too wet and you have to cook it for too long. So you can adjust it because all ingredients vary, and the moisture in the plums, the moisture in the apples, you know, it all varies. So it's just a guide. If you feel it needs more vinegar, then add a bit more. That's absolutely fine. It won't change anything other than make you happier, and that's a good thing. Okay, do we have any other questions? So I'm going to leave this to cook now. And next week, we will be returning to our, I've got it pictured in my head, can't think of the name of the candy peel, we'll be returning to that. We'll also be revisiting plums and treating them in an entirely different way. Again, making a great gift, or just gifting it to yourself and keeping them on the shelf for when you're fed up and you you want something, you know, really special. So I'll see you next week, and have fun. Thank you.